animals, as long as they have these stem cells in their skeletal muscle, which most animals do, it can be transferred to other animals like fish, chicken, other lamb.
Hanne, you have eaten, tasted, digesting. Your thoughts, what did it taste like?
I was expecting the texture to be more soft. There's really a bite to it. And there is quite some flavor with the browning. And I know there's no fat in it, so I didn't really know how juicy it will be. But there's quite some intense taste. It's close to meat. It's not that juicy. But the consistency is perfect. I miss salt and pepper.
And no ketchup, Richard. No ketchup. My goodness, Josh.
But
does it taste like beef? Does it taste like beef?
The texture, the mouth feel has a feel like meat. What Hanne was just saying, the absence is, I feel like the fat. Like it's a leanness to it, but the bite, feels like a conventional hamburger.
I love a good veggie corn dog or a garden burger. It's nice to eat something tasty that didn't have a mom, but I also like meat because of how delicious it is. So, how do I live with myself? Well, for now I don't, but we're getting closer than ever to having a fascinating alternative for those of us who don't want to eat the flesh of a once living animal, but do want to eat the flesh of a once living animal. Can I interest you in some real meat that was created in a laboratory? In vitro meat is what I hear it called most often, but that is a horrible name. No one is ever going to buy that. Some alternatives include cultured meat, test tube meat, hydroponic meat, and my personal least favorite, schmeat. And it's for real. In vitro meat has already been produced in very small quantities in several labs, including one in the Netherlands that's grown a piece of cow and pig muscle about 3 centimeters long and 1 centimeter wide. As to the science of this, which is why we're here in the first place, how do you grow meat? Basically, you do it the same way the animals do it. You start with stem cells and then you feed them. Some labs are starting out with embryonic stem cells, others extract specialized stem cells found in animals' muscle tissue called satellite cells. Either way, those cells are then cultured in a petri dish full of amino acids and lipids and other nutrients to start the growth process. The cells are then attached to a scaffold of collagen gel that allows them to organize themselves into muscle fibers and then eventually into muscle tissue. But like any muscle, this one needs to be exercised or else it will atrophy and be not tasty at all. So scientists apply electrical impulses to the tissue to stimulate it, giving it the workout it needs. Do this enough times and in theory you'll eventually get a ham or something. Now there are lots of ethical and environmental arguments for making meat in a lab. Often I'll hear people say that in vitro meat sounds gross and unnatural, but there really isn't much that's more gross and unnatural than the way that we currently produce meat. And that's not even to mention the amount of land and energy and water that's needed to raise food animals is astronomical and growing every year. Oxford University researchers have predicted that cultured meat can be produced with 96% fewer greenhouse gas emissions, 99% less land use, and 96% less water than conventional meat. But still, yes, there are many hurdles keeping in vitro meat from the mainstream, most importantly the cost. That little morsel of cow meat grown in the Netherlands, making a complete hamburger would require 30,000 more strips of that tissue, each of which takes 6 weeks to produce. By the time you're ready to fire up the grill, scientists estimate you're looking at a $250,000 burger. As an incentive to make lab meat more cost-effective, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals has offered a $1 million reward to the first scientist to create in vitro chicken that's cheap enough to bring to market. So even though in vitro meat probably won't be part of our daily diets anytime soon, it's still an idea whose time has come. In fact, 80 years ago, Winston Churchill actually predicted that we'd all be eating Kentucky Fried Lab chicken someday. Within 50 years, we shall escape the absurdity of growing a whole chicken in order to eat the breast or wing by growing these parts separately under a suitable medium. Well said, Winston. You may have been quite a few decades off, but still a pretty good prediction. So, when lab meat does show up in the grocery stores, what do you think we're going to call it? Because somehow I don't think schmeat's going to fly off the shelves. If you have a better name, let us know below in the comments. Thanks for watching this episode of SciShow. I hope that it doesn't totally gross you out, the idea of eating meat that's made in a lab, because kind of eating meat that's made on an animal is kind of gross. So remember that. Please join the intelligent and nuanced debate going on in the comments. No flame wars. And if you want to keep getting smarter with us, go to youtube.com/scishow and subscribe.
The United States Department of Agriculture reported that in 2008, over 35 million cattle, over 116 million pigs, and over 18 billion chickens were killed for meat in the United States. This does not include the animals that died on farms, that died during transportation, or the 100 million baby male chicks that were killed because they were useless to the egg companies. The meat industry wastes natural resources and pollutes our earth. The meat industry wastes resources with land, food, water, and fossil fuels. Another resource wasted is food. 70% of the grain and cereals grown in the United States is fed to farm animals. To produce 1 pound of meat, 16 pounds of grain is needed. 30% of Earth's landmass is used to raise animals as food. Livestock grazing has become the #1 reason plant species become extinct. That's also led to soil erosion and eventually desertification. Meat production also wastes water. Half of the water in the United States goes towards raising animals for food. In the production of meat, fossil fuels are also wasted. Fossil fuels including coal, oil, and natural gas. Fossil fuels are used to transport animals to the slaughterhouse. Animals travel sometimes days in a truck, crowded without food or water, and sometimes not even brakes. After the slaughterhouse, the animals are taken to a meat processing plant. From there, they are taken to the grocery store, where the meat is refrigerated until being sold. These places that hold the animals, whether feed mills, slaughterhouses, or processing plants, use an enormous amount of electricity. Tens of thousands of animals are killed each day. As well as wasting resources, the meat industry also pollutes our environment. The United Nations reported that the meat, egg, and dairy industry account for 65% of the worldwide nitrous oxide emissions. The Environmental Protection Agency, better known as EPA, animal production is the single largest source of methane gas emissions in the United States. This is probably the result of the large amount of animals